You feel drained, guilty, and constantly anxious, but you can never quite point to what the problem is. Why is the abuse so powerful yet so invisible? This is the dark psychological paradox of toxic control tactics, a system that hides its manipulation in plain sight.
It's this constant hum of anxiety, right? That feeling like you're always walking on eggshells, where one wrong step, one wrong word could set off a landmine you didn't even see. You start to second-guess everything. Your own memories, conversations you thought you had, suddenly they're up for debate. And your feelings? Well, they're dismissed as overreactions, so you just start to swallow them. You end up apologizing for things you're not even sure you did, all in the name of keeping the peace. It's like this slow, quiet fading of your own reality.
And that's the real kicker, isn't it? If the damage feels so real, why is the abuse itself so hard to see? Why can't you explain it to your friends, or even to yourself, in a way that actually makes sense? You end up feeling completely alone, not just because of the manipulator, but because of the slippery, invisible nature of the abuse itself. And, well, it's designed to be that way.
And here is the answer. This isn't just a string of bad days or a bunch of misunderstandings, no. It is a deliberate, carefully built system. It's engineered to be invisible, and here's the crucial part, to make you feel like you're the problem. It works by hiding these control mechanisms right out in the open, often disguised as love or concern or even a bad joke. So, to figure out how to escape it, we first have to see the blueprint.
So in this explainer, we are going to take that system apart, piece by piece. We'll start with a paradox of invisible abuse. Then we'll open up the coercive control toolkit to see exactly what tools they're using. From there, we'll uncover the three-stage hook system. That's the engine that drives the whole thing. We'll also dig into the psychology, looking at the manipulator's motive and the target's empathy. And then we'll get to the good stuff, how to dismantle the system. And finally, we'll see why the most powerful truth is that seeing the system breaks the hook.
All right, so let's get into it by opening up the toolbox. I want you to think of a manipulator less like someone who's just difficult and more like a skilled craftsman with a very specific set of tools. Each one is designed for a particular job in building this invisible prison around you. It's so important to get that these aren't just personality quirks. They are calculated instruments of control. Let's name them.
First, let's just define what we're actually dealing with. Toxic control tactics are not random. They are a systematic strategy. Now, you often see these behaviors with narcissistic or Machiavellian personality types, but it's the pattern itself that really matters. It's a pattern that lets someone put on a perfectly charming face in public while exercising total dominance behind closed doors. And the goal is always, always to control your inner world, what you feel, what you think, and ultimately what you do.
And that big picture goal? It has a name: coercive control. Imagine your sense of self, your confidence, your identity, your grip on reality. Imagine it's a statue. Well, coercive control is the process of using these tools to chip away at that statue, bit by bit, until you don't even recognize it anymore. Because once your sense of self is gone, you become compliant. You just lose the will to fight back because you can't trust your own judgment. You start relying on them, not just for approval, but for your very perception of what's real.
So what makes these tools so sneaky and effective? It's these three core features. First, they run on ambiguity. Think of those vague promises like, "Oh, we'll see," or when they say, "I just need space," with zero explanation. It keeps you in this state of constant confusion and hope, always trying to solve a puzzle that has no answer. Second, plausible deniability. This is their get-out-of-jail-free card. They'll say something really cruel, and when you react, it's always, "I was just kidding. Can't you take a joke?" Suddenly, you're the one who's too sensitive. And finally, the most insidious part. They condition you to believe that your reaction is the problem, not their action. So you bring up something that hurts you, and before you know it, the whole conversation is about how you're just too much, or overreacting, or crazy.
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute heart of the machine. If the tactics are the individual gears, this is the engine they create when they all work together. We're about to look at the engine of psychological erosion itself, a three-stage system that is devastatingly effective. Understanding how this engine runs is the absolute key to shutting it down. You see, the system operates in three phases that just feed into each other in a loop. It all starts with stage 1, dependency. This is the hook. It's where you get emotionally pulled in, usually through intense charm, what they call love bombing. Then it shifts into stage 2, erosion. This is the core of the control.
where your sense of self is actively demolished. And finally, it all hardens into stage 3, containment. This is the reinforcement phase. This is when the cage door locks and any attempt you make to get out is punished, which keeps you trapped right there in the cycle. Let's really look at how those first 2 stages work in tandem.
This slide just lays it out so perfectly, showing how the system shifts from attraction to demolition. The dependency stage is built on something called intermittent reinforcement. These are the random, unpredictable moments of affection that feel like hitting the jackpot on a slot machine. It gets you hooked, psychologically addicted to the possibility of a win, so you keep playing, no matter how much you lose. But once you're hooked, the system switches gears into the erosion stage. The goal is no longer about attracting you, it's about dismantling you. And the main tools for that are gaslighting, which attacks your memory, and projection, which makes you carry the weight of their own flaws.
As you can see right here, every single tactic has a very specific job. Intermittent reinforcement, that creates the addictive bond we just talked about. Gaslighting is like a reality shredder. They'll say that never happened with so much conviction, you actually start to doubt your own mind. Projection, that's where they take all their own negative stuff and dump it on you. They're the ones yelling, but they accuse you of being angry. They're the one lying, but they call you dishonest. And finally, guilt tripping and triangulation are used to punish you anytime you try to be independent. A guilt trip sounds like, after everything I've done for you. And triangulation, that's when they bring someone else into it to make you feel ganged up on, like saying, you know, even my sister agrees you're overreacting.
And this quote, this just reveals the twisted genius of the whole system. The internal chaos ensures the victim is too busy managing self-doubt to resist. The constant confusion, the anxiety, the self-doubt, these aren't side effects. They are the intended outcome. By creating this storm inside your own head, the manipulator makes sure you use up all your energy just trying to stay sane. You get so busy questioning yourself that you have no mental resources left to question them, let alone fight back. Your own energy gets turned into a weapon against you. So, why? Why does this dynamic get its hooks in so deep? To get that, we have to look at the psychology on both sides of this equation. It's not a one-way street. It's more like a toxic lock-and-key mechanism, where the manipulator's needs perfectly exploit the target's vulnerabilities. Let's break that down.
On the manipulator side, the motivation is usually about 2 things. First, impunity. This is the desire to have total control with zero accountability. The invisible nature of these tactics is perfect for that. Second is ego regulation. They often have a really fragile sense of self and need what's called narcissistic supply, which is basically your emotional energy. Your attention, your reactions, your confusion, it all fuels them and makes them feel powerful. Now, on the target side, a huge vulnerability is high empathy. Empathetic people naturally want to give others the benefit of the doubt, which makes them prime targets for guilt tripping. This gets layered with a powerful psychological effect called cognitive dissonance. This is the brain-breaking stress of trying to hold 2 opposite ideas at once. I love this person, and this person is hurting me. To relieve that stress, the brain will often ignore the painful reality and just keep chasing the fantasy of the good person they first met. Okay, we have analyzed the machine. We've seen all the moving parts and how it runs. Now, we switch from analysis to action. How do you actually take it apart? The great thing is, because this is a predictable system, there is a predictable counter strategy. This is where we stop just understanding the trap and start learning how to disarm it. And it's going to take awareness, courage, and a real commitment to yourself.
The counter strategy really boils down to 3 essential steps. Step 1, identify the core pattern. The goal here is to stop seeing each incident as a one-off and recognize it for what it is, a deliberate system. Step 2, deny supply and demand clarity. This is all about cutting off their psychological fuel and refusing to live in that fog of confusion anymore. And step 3, the final defense, is to enforce a no-contact boundary. This is about creating the space, physically and emotionally, that you need to heal, if it's safe and possible for you to do so.
So step 1 kicks off with a practice called external reality testing. Because your internal sense of reality has been so messed with by gaslighting, you have to anchor yourself to things that are external and objective. This means writing stuff down, documenting incidents, dates, times, what was actually said. It means talking to a trusted friend or a therapist who's outside the dynamic and can give you a clear-eyed perspective. This is how you start to see the predictable loop. And you pair this with radical self-focus, which is just deciding to take all that energy you were spending trying to figure them out, and instead you point it back at your own needs, your own thoughts, and your own healing.
Step 2 is all about cutting off their fuel. And a fantastic tool for this is the acronym JADE. It stands for Justify, Argue, Defend, and Explain. You have to stop doing these 4 things. See, jading is the exact narcissistic supply they crave. When you justify your feelings, you're handing them something to tear down. When you argue with their pretzel logic, you're playing a game you will never, ever win because it's not about logic for them. When you defend your own character, you're buying into their frame and giving them power. And when you explain yourself over and over, you're talking to someone who isn't trying to understand you. They're trying to control you. So, by refusing to jade, you starve the whole system.
And this brings us to our final, and honestly most powerful section. Seeing the system breaks the hook. The ultimate takeaway from all of this is that knowledge of this system is the very weapon that dismantles it. This abuse can only survive in darkness and confusion. The second you shine the light of awareness on the blueprint of the trap, you are no longer a prisoner. You become an observer, and from there, you can find your way out.
So let's just land the plane here with the core insight of this whole explainer. The single most important shift you can make is to really, truly let this sink in. The abuse is not random. It's not chaotic behavior from a good person who's just having a bad day. It is not an accident. It is not a misunderstanding.
It is, as we've seen, a meticulously built system, an architecture of control with one purpose: to keep you confused, second-guessing yourself, and, at the end of the day, to keep you compliant and hooked. The minute you see it as a predictable, impersonal system instead of some personal failing of yours, something amazing happens. That crushing weight of self-blame just lifts, and it lands right where it belongs, on the manipulator and their tactics.
And now you know exactly how the pattern works. It's that toxic cocktail of intermittent reinforcement, those random rewards that get you addicted, and gaslighting, the constant assault on your reality. Together, they create this profound state of psychological erosion. And that erosion is what keeps you chasing the fantasy of the good times, totally blinding you to the destructive reality you're living in. But awareness breaks that loop. By documenting what's real to fight the gaslighting, and by enforcing boundaries to starve the system, you take your control back. You start to dismantle it.
You know, once you see the system, you really can't unsee it. Every vague comment, every backhanded compliment, every little twist of reality, it all becomes transparent. The manipulations become predictable, and the hook, it just loses its power because you can finally see the string attached. This knowledge is the single greatest tool you have. It takes you from a place of confusion and self-doubt to a place of clarity and strength. And so the final question isn't about them anymore. It's about you. Now that you see the system, how will you regain control?